Hey guys.
There we go.
There we go.
Well, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm really excited to talk to you because I love your work. I love your community.
Thank you. Likewise. Great to chat with you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, ever since I came across your work and your page. Um, I felt an immediate draw to you for two reasons. The first is that um, you speak from truth, and that's as rare as is the second reason I was drawn to you, which is your humor and the humor you bring into spirituality. um, I think is just another telltale sign of your level of consciousness and where you stand on this awakening journey, because the more you tend to wake up coming into consciousness, the more silly the world seems and the more you're able to laugh at it all, right? So anyway, I just wanted to say that's, what I really appreciate about you, and, the things you share. You speak from a place of truth, universal faith, and I really resonate with it. So appreciate what you do.
Thank you, man.
And, I got your book right here,
Great.
Little Things a Lie.
Appreciate it.
And, I think you're doing great stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, likewise. I'll send it right back to you. I get a lot of people asking about community, and I think in the deconstruction spirituality land, people don't have fellowship anymore, or they left the church, or they left a group of community of people, and they're searching for that. And you and Cub, my buddy Cub Cuker, he has a supernatural podcast. He has a really great community. Actually, Michael at Third Eye Drops too, so there's a few of you guys, but I'm in Awakenpedia,
Yes.
and it's pretty great. So you guys y'all are a really active community, and I think that's kind of the missing piece of the puzzle for a lot of people that leave church, leave religious upbringing, and say, well, is there anyone else doing this? Is there anyone else?
Is there anyone else
Uh, you know,
out there?
is there anyone else out there? Is anyone else cracking through the veil? Or is it just me? And it's nice to kind of remind people that they're not alone.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, what is it? I don't know too much yet about your personal story, your backstory, from at least your perspective as you see it. But what got you into spirituality, and what draws you to it?
I've really always been into it. My mom was asked by a friend of hers recently. She's like, "Why did your son write a book about religion? Like, where did that come from?" And she goes, when all the kids were reading Harry Potter, Bob was reading Thich Nhat Hanh,
Yeah,
and that's really true. I'm 35. I was reading Thich Nhat Hanh when I was like 14, so it's been like 20 years. And I think that just, yeah, the deeper questions, scientific materialism is becoming a relic very quickly now. Yeah, it seems like the old school religious exoteric institutions don't really have the answers. But sure seems like the mystics do. The world mystic traditions, when you study them, even in an academic setting, you start to see the overlap. You start to see, the symmetry between, terms may be different, but the concepts are the same. Mr. Eckhart says theologians may quarrel, but the mystics speak the same language. And so it's just, I really loved the connections. I think the overlap between different traditions of people saying, "Oh, this is this religion, this is this religion," but then when you really break it down, you see the parallels.
yeah,
That really excites me, and that's kind of always been a part of the work.
yeah, yeah. And I think today in particular is such an exciting time to be a spiritualist, because for the first time ever, modern science is affirming the intuitive truth that mystics have been pointing to since the dawn of time, essentially, which is that you are of emptiness, as the Buddha says. You're nothing, right? And when you look at,
Sunyata.
yeah, and when you look at yourself under the quantum subatomic microscope, the you that you would call physical dissolves into nothing. And to me, it's just such an exciting discovery, because what was considered woo-woo and wacko and cultish and satanic in the past for having some type of metaphysical beliefs, now modern science is affirming it. And that's just kind of put spirituality on the main screen, if you will, which I think is pretty cool.
It's true. The Nobel Peace Prize, or not peace, sorry, Nobel Physics Prize winners last year. I've kind of been reinvestigating, and they basically proved that the universe is non-local, and I think what I say in my book actually is like it's a tightrope to make some of those claims, and I'm not necessarily making the accusation that you are, but I think it's the healthiest way for me as not a scientist is to be very careful around what science is saying about spirituality and what it's not. I think ultimately the beauty of science is that it's always expanding. I think the best aspect of science is that it's always discovering the new thing, which is, in my view, similar to mystics. The mystics are always open; they're always experimenting with ourselves, with our lives, in the same way. And I make those parallels. The actual mechanics, I'm not the right person to speak on that. And I will say this too, which is something that there's a really great book called An End to Upside Down Thinking that I reference all the time by Mark Gober, where he talks about how, for example, scientific, it's also in The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn, which is that there's a fixed stubbornness within academia, within even the science world, that isn't so crazy about pioneers. Pioneers are basically always called radical, they're always called crazy. And then what happens is decades, and then that becomes the new norm, that becomes the new understanding. So I think we're kind of in that right now, just from a zoom out vantage point, in that a quantum physicist here and, different theoretical physicists are saying, it's a simulation, right? Sounds like it's a dream from Advaita Vedanta. There's a lot of exciting parallels. But mainstream science as a whole, I think until the Nobel Prize last year, there's this like tendency to resist those connections. So yeah, to your point, it will be very interesting to see what happens in the next decade or two.
Yeah.
The rejection of the embrace, and
You bring up an interesting point too, one that I've flirted with for some time, of just the notion of what truly is reality, right? The absolute reality that is, from which all experience is derived and interpreted. And the simulation hypothesis is one that I've continued to hear a lot about, and one that as I continue to progress on the awakening journey myself, I intuitively find myself coming back to that as a potentiality. And of course, I don't like to spend too much time there, Bob, because it's still just a conjuring of mind, and all we really know that exists is consciousness itself as the one thing. But just to satisfy the curiosity, what do you think about simulation hypothesis?
It lines right up with the mystic philosophy, which is that this world is a dream, that this plane of time and space is illusory. And so let's really dive into that. In the Vedic definition of real is different than the English or the Western culture definition of real. It's pretty important to clarify the terms here. So when Americans, let's just say, like us, you're in America, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. When Americans say real, we typically mean touchable,
right.
tangible, seeable, visible, sense object. And to your point earlier, science long ago, you know, proved that we that's not very valid. We can see 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum with our eyeballs. We can't see anything.
Yeah.
So the senses aren't really it. The way the Vedas describe reality, it's three characteristics: eternal, unchanging, and self-luminous are the three adjectives for real.
Yeah.
And that doesn't describe much in this plane.
Right.
Because everything's changing, nothing's eternal.
Right.
Everything requires another substance or another fuel. In other words, it's not self-luminous.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, the Advaitins, Sri Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, these guys that describe the process of jnana yoga, which is just going in, which I think, I consider you a jnani. I think going in and just investigating, self-inquiry, undoing the attachment. It takes time, which isn't real, but it takes effort. It takes sustained effort to just undo it. Melts away. And, according to guys and gals far, ahead of me, it seems like the experience tends to be this idea of absolute oneness, of absolute unity with all creation. Masks of the one, is a term that I really like. We're all just masks of the one in various degrees, the various cosmic play, cosmic drama.
Sure.
So don't take it so serious.
Yeah. It's the Maya and
the Maya,
divine play.
Exactly.
Illusion and the this is all just a divine play. But just circling back to simulation for a minute, you point to how what I also intuitively sense is true, which is what the ancient mystics have pointed to, the Maya, the illusion of the reality of the sense-perceived world as something that is objectively real, and really is just this illusion, or perhaps you could say relative reality, that's derived from the unchanging, eternal, absolute reality that indwells within and is of all form. But then, what's so fascinating is that, and there's a really great book on this called The Simulation Hypothesis. You see how this idea of simulation is affirmed not only by ancient mystic intuition, but also quantum science, right? The idea that you see how, as we just talked about, that all is an illusion. When you look at the world, the physical world, under a subatomic microscope, there's nothing there. It's spaciousness. That's what exists. Just emptiness, which very much sounds like what it would be if you were in a computer,
right.
And that's what the world would be. And then,
ones and zeros, baby.
Yeah. And that's what brings it to the next point, which is computer science. In terms of how and this is where, you look at Elon Musk's argument about why he believes this is a simulation. It's a 1 in billions chance that we're not a simulation, because technology improvements, as we are proving with our own advancements today in building virtual worlds, if there's any degree of technological improvement over eternity, you essentially guarantee that you are a simulation. And, the way that programs operate in computers, you see how analogous that is to our own existence, and how programmatic we are, from our own bodily functions to, the sun rising and setting, and, the way the seasons coming and going, and the revolution and rotation of the earth, and just how things happen in cycles over and over and over, to point to the programmatic nature of this reality. And
Yeah,
fractal.
I saw a little clip of it was like serotonin. Have you seen that? And it's like, this is happiness. And it's just
I
like
don't think I've seen that. No.
crawling on a nerve,
Oh,
crawling on like, this neurological function to your point. It's like it feels very computery,
yeah,
clearly,
yeah.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
mean, the brain's been compared to a computer for eons, um, and then just the more you look at it, the more things seem to add up. And
I
then
think, yeah, I did, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off because I really like what you're saying. I think it starts to get too hypothetical for me at a
yeah,
certain point.
yeah, and that's where
And
it's dropped, because it's like, again, it's just it's a curiosity of mind. Perhaps it's what's beyond the edge of the mystery, as what great spiritual teachers point to and talk to. But I can't help but think that the Big Bang itself is just like the on switch of the power button sometimes.
yeah,
In
sure.
terms of turn it
It's
on.
of course calls it the tiny mad idea.
Mm, yeah,
The
yeah,
tiny mad idea that I could go off and play by myself.
yeah.
I bring up this parable a lot, which is relevant to kind of our conversation about the simulation to me, which is the Buddha. He was asked one time, this guy comes up to him and says, because you're the awakened one, how many realms are there? How many heavens are there? How many layers of existence are there? And he says, well, it's like this. There's a war being fought, and a man is shot by a poisoned arrow. They call the doctor, the medic, and he comes to heal the man. The medic is not concerned about the two armies, who the generals are, what the battle is, who shot the arrow. The only thing that the medic is concerned about is removing the arrow and saving the man's life. He
Mm,
says, similarly, don't get too caught up in all of the hypothesizing of existence, because it's actually the answer actually isn't in that.
yeah,
The answer is outside of it. It's beyond.
yeah,
It's almost distraction,
yeah,
on a sense,
yeah,
to be too concerned with the mechanical operation aspect of it all.
yeah.
So I really honor that, and maybe it's a cop out,
No.
but that's how I see it. I'm with Siddhartha on this one.
Yeah, no, I'm with you too, and I think that's I've spent many a nights sleeplessly pondering about
Pondering the
the nature of existence, what truly is beyond the veil, as the what you can call the Great Awakening, right? When it's like, what happens when all illusions are fully dissolved, when you are egoless and you fully are self-realized? It's that question of, well, what comes next? And when you ask the spiritual teachers, I mean, all they can say is wait and see, because
right.
that's all that you can really do. Which is why
Go
I
wash
like,
the dishes.
yeah, yeah, Zen masters, they'll say, back to the dishes, uh, pay attention. Um,
Yeah.
and that's where I also come back to that time and time again. Whenever I find myself back in the mind wandering about, what could be, I just come back into consciousness. Consciousness is always the common denominator, and what the seat of consciousness, and living from that
Yeah.
experience, and just how profound it is when you operate from the seat of consciousness rather than the seat of the ego, because it truly does a 180 flip of how you see the world, how you experience it, interpret reality, and your sense of self. And I think it's so important because, as someone who was in a very deeply suffering state, when I was heavily conditioned, in the heavily conditioned state, and deeply identified with my mind and as heavy ego, also the time when I seemingly had everything, all the money, all the toys, the success, and but yet was completely miserable, had everything and was totally unhappy, to then just going through this profound shift in consciousness and letting go of all of those things, and that suffering being transmuted into deep, stable peace. I think that this is it. This is the answer to the extensive amounts of suffering that we're witnessing in the world, from addiction to suicide to the larger mental illness crisis that plagues our globe. It's a spiritual disconnectedness, the disconnection from the source of life itself.
Yeah, it's ego identification.
Yeah, and
You put it beautifully.
yeah, that's what it is, and I see this as the tsunami that's on its way in terms of the awakening consciousness. There's people like us who are awakening, right? And yet we're still the minority in the world today. At least so it seems. It's a largely ego predominated world, right? And
Yeah, there's a lot of real beauty though, and you're right. And I think just to like touch on the nuance of like almost like proselytizing or evangelism, you know, in some sense, like when you get this spiritual sense, or like, you know, even like a moderate understanding of what we're talking about, you want to go tell everybody. You know, and I had been for a long time, and nobody listened. I you know, it's all working perfectly. Like that's another theme in Vedanta in Hinduism, which is like it's all unraveling, it's all unfolding exactly as it should. And I think there's a lot of like stress around the statistical levels of awareness. And I'm reading Ken Wilber right now, like integral theory and spiral dynamics, and it's very like heady around like where everybody's at consciousness wise and how to get them up. And then you go back and read, you know, Tao Te Ching, and it's like, what is it? Nothing ever hurries in nature, but everything is accomplished. You know, there's this, the Tao, it's called, you know, there's this unfolding that's really profound and much beyond our egos, you know. And at the same time, I always kind of have to counter that by saying, like, that doesn't mean don't do anything. You know, that doesn't mean be apathetic. That doesn't mean just sit on your cushion. I think that's probably the number one misconception, one of the highest misconceptions of spirituality, I think, as a whole, is like, oh, you just sit there.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like what happens when you sit there is that you awaken this level of compassion in yourself, and you awaken this level of solidarity and empathy with all humans and all beings, not just humans, every being on this planet.
right.
You want to identify with them and, you know, help relieve their suffering in some sense. So it's a tricky one though for people, because it's like, well, how can we, you know, even Ram Dass and Tim Leary back in the day at Harvard, when they started doing acid and psilocybin, and so they said, this is going to be, you know, how do we put this in the water? You know, this is amazing.
Yeah,
It's like, that's not the answer, actually.
right,
You know, making it more available for people can't hurt, but
right.
you know, everyone's coming to it on their own understanding at their own
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. And I think you touched on a really important point, Bob, which is, you know, kind of like what I see as a shifting of just like the way in which the way in which enlightenment is seen and understood as from old age into new age. You know, in old age, it's very much interpreted and seen as like that stereotypical quintessential image of like a monk sitting in a cave, meditating and never leaving his entire life, as many have, many great spiritual teachers. But as we move into the new earth, in which we see mass amounts of the population coming into awakened consciousness, foresee a vision of a future in terms of where this is unfolding, the evolution of consciousness, so that enlightenment is brought into the modern household. And like, what is that going to look like? Enlightened family dynamics, and what that really means, and what I'm trying
We're
to say
getting
is,
there.
I foresee what Eckhart Tolle calls awakened doing as the way in which we'll do of the new age, which is essentially just to do from a state of love rather than fear, if I had to sum it up, so that we can cooperate together rather than endlessly compete as an aim to destroy each other.
Yeah, I hear the absolute truth in both statements. that there's so much work to do. Like I hear the truth in that, and there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
I hear the truth in that
Yeah.
too. Like, and I
Yeah.
think that's part of like the mystical experiences, like the paradox, the paradoxical nature of the dream. I was going to mention too. I have Yogananda framed somewhat unintentionally here in my life, but he's welcome. His autobiography of a yogi is about his technique is called Kriya Yoga, which is it's a type of meditation. It's similar to Kundalini, which I practice, which is chakra pranayama. Anyway, it was taught by fairly, basically an enlightened being, Mahavatar Babaji. I won't be the metaphysics of it. I don't really care. It's fine, but it doesn't. That's not what got me into it. The practical use of it got me into it. But the reason he taught that it was taught to Yogananda's basically guru's guru was in order to do exactly what you just said, to bring it into this called the grihastas, grihastas, householders. Because before, this is in the middle 1800s, before the middle 1800s in India, almost all spiritual initiation was reserved for monastics. And Lahiri Mahashaya was basically he was a father and a husband. He worked at a train company. He worked with the train engineers, and then he became one of the greatest yon avatars of modern day yoga. And so that shift has been happening. Like you said, there's a lot of work to do, in some level. I mean, I think our education system is garbage in America. Our prison system, the injustice system, the government. I mean, look around, capitalism. Look around. I mean, pick your sector, right?
Yeah.
It's like because you can't do all of them, and but what it's going to take is just you doing what you are embodied by. What you're called to do. I'm feeling a lot of calls towards the education system. That's why it's the first thing I said. I'm working on curriculum. And so I'm really into that. But like, we need everybody, to your point, to like whatever injustice that you identify with, like lean into that and make it a service, make it a devotional practice. That's the way that things get changed.
Yeah. To bring the being into the doing.
That's right. That's beautiful.
Right?
They're not at odds.
Yeah, no. It's all one of the same, two sides of the same coin, if you will. And Ram Dass talks a lot about that, which is our great challenge as pilgrims on the pilgrimage is to be able to simultaneously balance existing in two dimensions at once. It's both part being, part human. And the art of living is to be able to be human so that you can actually bring the being into your humaneness. And in many ways that's the living truth as I see it, as enlightenment in practice, so that you can exist and participate in the world from a state of peace. No longer are you clinging to outcomes, trying to augment your mind-made sense of self through some type of acquisition, some having or doing. Now you're just doing for the sake of the doing itself. It is self-fulfilling, right? In the present moment, it's self-fulfilling.
What is it? And after the Enlightenment, the laundry, the Cornfield, Jack Cornfield book. Yeah, that's nice. Hey, Marcelo, love you, brother. Couple of nice comments too. He's been reflecting on this dichotomy. And somebody asked, what is a mystic? We should come back to that too, if you want. I was also going to add, you mentioned the Ram Dass harmonizing, you and I are both basically devotees of him. He says the rational and the intuitive, we're supposed to be harmonizing the rational and the intuitive. What's happened today is that in modern society is that the scientists are the new priests, which is a chapter in my book, kind of to our earlier conversation. But, the rational mind is like we worship at the altar of the rational mind, you know, and so anything intuitive is woo-woo. You know, anything intuitive is fairy tales. And
Yeah.
so as much as in my work and my, you know, and I'm saying that sarcastically because I don't believe that, friends, the a lot of my work, you know, most people are appreciative, which is nice. But about 10% of my comments are angry Christians. Well,
Yeah.
about 10% are angry atheists, you know, too. So it's like I get both ends of the spectrum that have an issue with anything transcendental, you know, whatsoever. And, you know, that's fine. Their comments aren't working.
Yeah. And I wanted to
And they're
bring
just coming from a place of suffering too if you're commenting angry stuff. But
yeah, yeah, of course. And that's what I wanted to turn the conversation to as well for at least a few minutes here, Bob, which is just the work you're doing, you know, and to talk about you and to affirm you and your creations in this space. Because I think that if more people were to view your works, there'd be more love and peace in the world.
thanks,
Um, so I'd
buddy.
love to just, you know, let you talk a bit about how you, because the style of and your route of how you're going about this is, you know, an interesting one, and you have to deal with a lot of angry Christians, right, and various people that are commenting, saying, you know, I mean, you know better than I would, but I've seen them just about how they're saying like, essentially, you don't even know Jesus, like you're not, you know, it's, and you're saying, well, I'm actually just showing Jesus's essential message, right? And
Yeah.
pointing to
Yeah. I've become a Jesus defender in a bizarre twist of fate, not the traditional
yeah,
style. But yeah, the mystic Jesus, you know, the cosmic Christ. Yeah, thank you. I went to UT, University of Texas at Austin, hook 'em horns. We've had a couple of nice Saturdays. Unrelated note,
football.
but we've been terrible for 15 years at football, but now we're good. I studied the Bible there, and I took about 4 or 5 classes on Jesus, 2 on Paul, a couple on the Apocrypha, and I just was obsessed with, and beyond that, religious studies was
Yeah,
the bachelor's that I got. It's not a master's, not a PhD, whatever, but, you know, 5 years of academic study on these topics, and Buddhism, Hinduism, shamanism, you name it. But I really love formative Christianity because it was so clear to me, Cameron, that the later stuff was the stuff that I had an issue with. You know, the likeliest early stuff is really great, and that resonated with my heart, and that's my book
yeah,
explains this all in much greater detail. But yeah, you see the humanness of the Bible. There's this idea in Christianity that you know, this hilarious doctrine called infallibility or inerrancy, that the word of every word in the Bible is true, and that's just, we have the receipts, we have the text, we can look at it, you can see the contradictions, you can see the differences. We have external and internal evidence. So what do I mean by that? External evidence just means there's archaeological digs that these scholars go on to try to understand more about the ancient world. There's plenty of other material from the Greco-Roman world, from the Hellenistic period. There's a lot of really, really, really good scholarship the last 150 years on the Bible and the New Testament. And yeah, I mean, basically, you know, I would say if I can nutshell my work, it's don't throw out the baby with the bath. You know, the baby is wonderful, but the bath water is dirty, and it needs a fresh batch. You know, it's become this watered down weird thing. But the original guy, the Nazarene, he's, you know, I believe he's one of the most highest awakened beings in the history of humanity. He forgave his killers. He's getting killed brutally, and he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do."
yeah,
It's fine. It's okay. That's Christ consciousness. That's the avatar. That's as good as it gets. And that's the Buddha. That's Krishna. There's plenty men and women throughout history who have undone the ego and kind of stepped into embodiment of spirit.
Yeah.
Undone their individuality.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's a real honor for me to try to sift through the egoic misinterpretations and corruptions, basically, of our big brothers and sisters.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I sense. Like, I feel like I'm doing as well with the teachings on Awakenpedia.
Yeah, you are.
Essentially just a way to correct the misinterpretations as been corrupted through the egoic mind. And I just do it in my own vehicle, my own way, and focus areas. And I think that's beautiful. It just says you do the same thing with your focus on formative Christianity, and we're all pointing to the same truth. It's just different roads to get there. And I think that's beautiful how. And that's my favorite. That's what really just fires me up about universal faith and truth itself. Because when you look at the essential messagings across all pure religions, and you kind of strip away the dogma and the narratives, you see that really they're all pointing to the same thing, right, in their own ways.
The truth is one. The sages call it by many names.
Yeah.
From the Rig Veda, which is 3,000 years old.
Yeah. Exactly. And we've seen how, though, like, as we've had, generational influence, and you could say tainting or egoic infection, come into what at one point was a pure interpretation of what is, which in its essence is no interpretation at all. You see how it's been just distorted, right, and brought into something that now serves as a vehicle of division rather than union.
Yeah.
And it separates us. And it's called. I mean, there is no greater source of violence today than religious war. In many ways, like just the violence of trying to defend your beliefs, right, as a way to summarize it.
Yeah.
And
the us and them guys.
Yeah. And it's like, no, man, we're all just one. We're all a being, and we're getting lost and caught up in our perceived differences. And
on some level, Cameron, I think that this world, back to the earlier point, this plane of separation, this illusory plane of separation, if you will, for the folks down the rabbit hole with us today, this plane of separation isn't so crazy about messages of oneness. There's this. Yeah, I mean, they killed the Nazarene. They killed MLK. There's plenty of mystics actually throughout the history that the institution. Mansur al-Hallaj is a famous Sufi saint who danced to the gallows in chains. There's a lot of mystics that were killed throughout history, and those are kind of the guys I like. Like, just go back and read the guys that the institution kicked out, because they were on one. But it might just be, I think there's this idea, and I'm not making this accusation at you either necessarily, but there's definitely this idea in institutional religion, like heaven on earth. We're going to make heaven on earth, and that's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, according to the mystics, according to the non-dualists, there's no way to make heaven on earth, because this is separation. Heaven is oneness, earth is separation.
Yeah.
I think it's okay, again, to work towards a happy dream, relieve suffering. We still want to be an embodied spiritual message of love and unity. It doesn't mean don't do it again, but it doesn't mean that this is the bridge.
Right. Yeah. And exactly, and what you're saying is what I see as well, which is where it points to how institutionalized religion, organized, traditionalized religion, in some ways has been tainted, right? And so that the essential messaging has been lost, which is, if you look at that concept, heaven on earth, and looking at them as distinct entities or locations, if you will, that is supporting and reinforcing the dysfunctional belief in separation. But when you look at religion and see it for its purity of what it was trying to communicate, you can actually use it to help serve your ascension and consciousness into oneness, which is to say, the kingdom of heaven, as instead of being some place high up in the sky, it is a dimension of spaciousness that indwells within as you. It's here and now, right? And
it's the realization of one.
yeah.
And it dwells in you, but you can be blind to it. I think that's an important distinction. And someone says here, earth is the bridge. So-and-so says, earth is the bridge or the opposite of hell. Well, hell isn't real. So that one is a bizarre. Hell is a state of mind. To Cameron's point here, heaven is a state of mind and hell is a state of mind. Hell is the ego. Hell is being dependent on sense pleasure and sense, having your sense of satisfaction tied to anything external to you is hell. And that's the Buddha. That's not just Bob Peck. That's this is the mystic masters throughout all history here that I'm paraphrasing. Hell is when your happiness and peace and sense of identity is not inside of you, it's outside of you. And heaven is that awareness that it is inside of you. All of it's inside of you. And there's this inherent connectivity. There's this inherent bliss. There's this inherent sense of joy once you see the unitive nature of all phenomena.
Yeah, yeah. You exit the gates of hell to enter the kingdom of heaven, which is to say, you exit the ego to enter the pure consciousness that you realize you are, which is a state of being that is inherent and eternal and unchanging. That's the bliss that is experienced when you realize you are that.
Questions are coming in. These are pretty good. You want to go? You want to hit these?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Do you believe in individual souls? I just actually talked about this the other day.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. I don't believe in individual souls in the sense there's one soul, one life, one love, one consciousness expressed in the many forms, and those forms vary based on the vibration at which that one consciousness or one soul is expressed, which provides the appearance of differentiation. Of course, that's what makes up the Maya. So I see it as there's one source, right? One source of life, one soul, and it just is expressed in the many.
Yeah, that's really, really well said, and I'm pretty close to that. So, A Course in Miracles talks about, let me back up here briefly. So, every spiritual path is essentially on one end of the spectrum, dualism, and on the other end, non-dualism. And dualism just means two-ness. Non-dualism means not two. Mm-hmm. And so, you can kind of put a lot of different spiritual paths in that spectrum, all of them really. Non-dual being Advaita Vedanta, Zen Buddhism, and A Course in Miracles. And those are really my three faves that I kind of gravitate the most towards. Vedanta as a whole is a little bit more dualistic, which is Yogananda. But the reason I bring that up is because in the non-dualist philosophy, and in this idea of the illusory plane of separateness, reincarnation or individual souls are real in the dream. You see, just like I'm Bob and I'm talking to Cameron. I'm not Cameron right now. I'm Bob. Mm-hmm. We're two different guys in the dream.
Right.
Same thing with reincarnation and the wheel of samsara. The wheel of samsara is in the dream. You have near-death experiences. You have kids. I write about kids that recall past life traumas and affinities and things like that. People, kind of whatever you're into in some sense. When you're called to something that you don't know why, it's because you did it in a past life. Psychics understand that, the consciousness travels. We understand this. But in non-duality, that is also in the plane of illusory separateness. So there is still yet, I think to Cameron's point, you were articulating perhaps the non-dual reality, this non-dual transcendent capital R reality, this transcendental reality of oneness, of unity, of at one-ment with God that is beyond the dream of separateness. So it's, and that's about as much as I like to go in. We talked about concepts being a little bit hairy at times. That's all I need. It's like I don't have to go into any more about the mechanics of how it all operates. All I'm really trying to do is come down into the heart,
right?
Live from a place of love, and it'll work itself out. We don't really need to know,
right?
If who I was, if I was Benjamin Franklin or what it doesn't really matter. It just matters that I'm undoing the ego.
Yeah. I think you probably were Benjamin Franklin in a past life.
He did a lot of things.
He did. It's not a bad
inventor, statesman.
Yeah. Electricity, good stuff. But it is interesting, like you said. Reincarnation. These things, you can get caught up in them, and then it's like it's the trickery of the ego sometimes, in spiritual ego, because you get lost in concepts and then further attached to these spiritual concepts, and it's just spiritual beliefs. So you got to be careful not to, again, just like have your mind stick to certain or anything really. But the way I see reincarnation, just my intuitive sense about it, is that it is a process of purification, so that you work through your karma as to dissolve your ego across form, across incarnation. And essentially each incarnation serves as an opportunity to learn lessons and to heal. And you continue that healing journey across incarnations until you eventually are fully healed, which is to say you fully remember the oneness that you are, which is the Christ consciousness made realized. And that is when, as they say across various traditions, you can access the kingdom of heaven, you reach nirvana, you moksha, escape the matrix, simulation theory.
Yeah, wait. All these traditions have the same term for escaping, transcending, undoing. Yeah. That's interesting.
And so reincarnation is the process of continuing to go on the wheel of life until you work through all ego, essentially, which is karma, trapped energy that you're not, freeing yourself of the mind, the conditioned mind. Because some people live their entire life, right, and they never learn the lesson. They just continue to repeat the program over and over and over until they die. And, they're probably going to have to do it again.
The next one. Yeah, Yogananda says, we've all been fat, we've all been rich, we've all been skinny, we've all been poor, we've all been beautiful, we've all been ugly. It doesn't really matter. We're all so attached to what this role, this persona seems to be. Don't get caught. Don't get caught in the trap of the appearance of the mask, really, of the persona.
Right.
Use it. That's one thing. I have a great group of guys that are similarly down the rabbit hole and making content. And this guy says, it's like a mascot, which I love. It's Daniel Tyack. Follow him if you don't already. Daniel says, it's like a mascot. It's like, once you realize that this incarnation is the mascot, then you can use it. Then you're not concerned about doesn't matter what anyone thinks about me or says, or how could it?
Yeah.
It's like, may it just be a vessel. May
Yep.
it just be a vehicle for my own progress towards unity and everyone else's. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that I'm just in the stands. I just got a megaphone. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying?
Yeah. Just
So,
watching your
yeah.
life unfold. Right? You're not what's being played on the movie. You're the screen on which the movie is played. You're not the
Mm,
content of your life
mm,
as much as you are that which enables the content to be, that underlying substrate that enables all existence, forms of existence.
yeah. Brandon's answering Alex's question for us too, which is, I'll double tap that. Alex asks, so is the ultimate goal to awaken and reunite, or there's no inherent purpose? And Brandon says, there's no reuniting with what you never left. You simply realize you only thought you were separate.
Yeah, so it's a remembrance, right? And you
Yeah,
could
beautiful.
these are just words, right? So you could call it reuniting, but the essence is that you're remembering that which you had forgotten. Um, and so just as there's many names for
Yeah,
the one,
the
as you
words are ultimately form, which are
yeah,
not so useful.
yeah,
We're using finger painting
yeah,
to recreate the Mona Lisa. And
right.
it's
We're
like
all we're
we
only
can't quite sum it up with these audible throat
exactly.
vibrations.
Yeah. Everything's a pointer at the truth, right? No word or concept or anything that we ever do, speaks, whatever, can ever accurately encapture the truth itself. Um, they're just pointers. Everything's a pointer. Um, but we point nonetheless, and it's something that must be realized within, in your own, as you walk along the pathless path yourself. Um, yeah,
Yeah, beautifully put.
yeah. So, Bob, let me ask you something. I know you're active in this space. You've written a book. You're drawn to it. You were like me from a young age. For me, it was Emerson,
Oh, great.
not yeah, Ralph
Yeah,
Waldo Emerson.
yeah.
He was the
Shout
guy
out.
that lit my soul on fire.
That's amazing.
Again, like you.
Love him. Love
Yeah.
the Transcendentalists. As American spiritualists, we're all indebted to those guys, Thoreau
Yeah.
and Whitman. I think Whitman is America's Rumi.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. The Transcendentalists. I mean, I didn't know it at the
They're
time,
they're
but
getting slept on right now. People need to read them.
they do. And I mean, if you actually just look at the name itself of
Yeah,
that movement, transcendentalism quite literally means beyond the physical.
beyond the physical,
You know,
beyond the material. Yeah,
so
mad respect.
these were the OG modern day spiritualists that people, just largely disregarded or just considered as
Well,
individualists.
they also had early copies of the Gita,
Mm,
believe it or not. So there's a really great book called American Veda, by Philip Goldberg, it's called, I think it's called From Emerson to the Beatles, How Yoga Got to America, or something like that. It's basically the history of Hindu philosophy in America. As a Hindu philosopher in America, it's very relevant. And essentially Emerson and Thoreau were the first Americans to get the first English copies of the Gita and the Upanishads in the middle 1800s, I think 1830s, 1840s. Max Mueller, there were European translators, and when Emerson got it, he basically said, this is the deal. It's not this puritanical, we're dirty and powerless, iteration of Christianity, of churchianity, as Yogananda calls it, but rather, the message of the Upanishads is, and Hindu spirituality is, you are infinite.
yeah.
You are limitless, exhaustless energy. And, for, I think, Americans to get that, American philosophers, for better or worse, that does line up with American kind of specialness, in a sense. And taking over the rest of the expanse of the, endless land of America and the kind of new world culture. Some of the positive aspects of that line up with it. Obviously, there's issues in terms of all the way the government treated the natives, slavery, discrimination, to name a few. And now America's intervention in world wars and foreign governments, etc. So there's not good things about America being this powerful place, but it's interesting that Emerson, and our beloved transcendentalists read those texts and said, "Hey, this lifestyle lines up more with that those types of teaching." So,
yeah, and it reminds
self-reliance is very Upanishadic.
Right. But what you were just talking about reminds me of, a teaching I shared on Awakenpedia titled "The Pursuit of Happiness," and that was the Declaration of Independence, 1776, the founding fathers of the United States of America. And I intuitively just came to see that in many ways was like the birthing of the modern day ego, as I see,
of individualism.
And it's in the title.
Yeah.
The need to have to pursue happiness as something to go get out there then, as opposed to something that is to be realized here and now. And that fundamental philosophy and belief and conditioning that had been instilled for over a dozen generations is why, I sense we're so dysfunctional today, because we're all trying to go out there and get something to make us happy then, because we see happiness as something to be acquired.
And
something
the marketers are not helping.
Oh gosh.
Wait, what was I interrupted you. You were talking, I went on an Emerson and American Veda rant, but you were going to ask me a question.
That's right. No, yeah, I wanted to just talk a bit about you and your mission, if you have one. I'm curious about what, as someone yourself that's been drawn to this space, you've written a book, you're actively, contributing your insight to the world via various platforms. You're doing lives, you're on podcasts, you chatted with Aubrey Marcus, you're in it. Do you have a motive or an interest as to why you're doing this? Or is it simply that it's just a calling and you're being pulled into it and you intuitively sense, this is what the world needs, and it feels true? So I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a really deep question. The short answer is, in the last year since the book's been out, I've got a lot of messages and private comments and private messages from people saying, I was really hurting. I was really in a place of confusion, and this is starting to help me make sense of things. I think the watered downness nature of American Christianity in particular, and just American religion, it's become so wooden and so empty, that it's a real honor and joy for me to share the richness of the mystics, the mystical experience, and the accessibility, the practical spirituality of them, as well as just, you don't need to, get initiated. You don't need to tithe. You don't need to buy a book. It's the naturalist, most natural way to, come in to all of this. And so I've helped some people somewhat insanely to me in the last year. And I've got a handful of messages where it's like, okay, cool, I'll make 1,000 fucking TikToks. It's like, if I made 200 and it helps these guys, then I'm going to keep going. I'll give you my story thing. I was a child comedian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
When I was in middle school and high school, I did stand up, and I killed. I killed as a child comedian. And I did jokes about video games, and Zelda. And then I went to college and I was reading spiritual books this whole time. And I went to college and I met these guys that were way funnier than me. You know, they were just like effortlessly funny. Like I could hang, but I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna like go into comedy. Like that's not my thing. I'm really into Yogananda right now. You know, like I'm gonna do that. And I was starting to study film, and so I made religious films, and I kind of was like, I'm not doing funny stuff. I'm gonna make serious religious films. And as a spiritual person, I'd already left the church. Um, and so I did that. In my 20s, I made like really serious spiritual documentaries, and they played at festivals. You know, they didn't really get out there. I couldn't make a living doing it. I'm proud of them. They made me who I am. But then when I started writing this book, you know, about 5, 6 years ago, I was like, okay, it's an integration of, you know, the lightness from first period and the
Mm-hmm.
substance from the second period.
Yeah.
Kind of, this is act 3 for me in terms of like having fun with it. It's like I'm still passionate about all this stuff, and I'm meeting other guys doing it. James McRae, Words of Vibrations. He's like the funniest meme page on Instagram. He's doing a lot of like really good poetry right now, but he kind of comes from like really comedic memes. And I just, you know, Ram Dass is funny. You know, his lectures, like there's so many laughs, and Alan Watts. I mean, you know, I think there's a real like, it's a great space for me to be in and like try to, you know, get stuff out there in terms of like not taking it so serious, but also covering like the absolute depths, like as deep as I can possibly go, and laugh about it at the same time.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful marriage of quite literally bringing in, you know,
Like the
profound.
most serious thing, and it's just like, but it's cosmic joke. Doesn't matter.
So that's what I really appreciate. I appreciate many things about you, Bob, but you know, your humor, bringing that into this space is beautiful, and it's rare because you can't, like, in order to bring the humor into it, you really have to intuitively know it, right? You can't create spiritual humor, if you want to call it that, without understanding, knowing on a soul level, being connected to source to be able to speak of it. So it's a beautiful marriage of what, you know, and points to what I mentioned earlier, the awakened doing. You know, it's bringing the being, the soul, into what you do, into the world. And so I really,
Thanks,
I value this connection with you and this relationship, and I look forward to seeing how it evolves over time, in Awakenpedia, outside Awakenpedia, with your own endeavors. You know, but you think you're gonna write a new book at any point?
I'm working on the idea for the next one.
All right.
I'll probably start it next year, but yeah, I do want to write some more, and it will probably be a less controversial title than Original Sin is a Lie.
Yeah.
I just dropped my son off. He's 3.5. He just started daycare at a preschool. It's adorable. It's at a church, and I'm like, I have not told them that I'm an author. This is like the first time in my life where I'm like, no, please, like, you don't have to Google me at all. Like, just hope he had a good day at school. No, I think I'll come back and talk to you when the second book's there, and it's definitely coming, and it's based on what a lot of people have come back to me about in terms of what they're interested in. I'll keep you guys posted.
Yeah.
Follow me.
Yes.
More info soon.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Still living life. Still polishing my own mirror in the meantime.
Of course. Yeah. But speaking of books, this is the one that we got now.
Yeah.
Original Sin is a Lie.
It's a nice hunk of wood, guys. It's 320 pages.
Yeah. It's solid.
There's a lot of crap in there.
I know we were going to do a little bit of a, you know, fun little giveaway thing for the Awakenpedia.
Alex, thank you for your questions, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, we didn't get to all of them, but
yeah. I was going to say, Alex,
follow up with you.
Yeah. Let's do that. Follow up
I mean,
and
maybe
afterwards.
methods to awakening would be a good one.
Mm.
If you have any, let me know, Cam.
I'm trying to think. Was that a
It
question where it's,
was, yeah. What are some practical methods? Which is maybe a nice like final quick topic before, because we're
yeah.
going to do a book giveaway and a shirt giveaway. We didn't really plug that this whole
No,
conversation.
I was gonna end with that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
You want to
but we
talk
can look at,
practical methods real quick?
yeah, let's look at that. I'm just reading his question. What methods would you, uh, meditation, yeah,
Meditation every day. I think don't be scared of having to do it too long. Um, even 5 minutes. Like there's a Buddhist monk, he says 2 minutes. It's just doing it.
yeah,
And 5 minutes, if you're sitting there and you're not using an app or anything, sometimes the apps are nice, the guided, those are nice.
yeah,
You can do those longer. If you're just sitting under a tree, five
yeah,
minutes, especially now in 2023, is a long time. So
yeah, yeah,
start
yeah,
with that. Try 5 minutes a day.
yeah.
Um,
Meditation is fantastic, and as you know, Bob, if you Awakenpedia members, they receive free access to FitMind, our meditation training
Great.
partner. Fantastic app, over 10,000 5-star reviews, which members get for free as a nice perk. But because meditation is a very important way to bridge the spiritual dimension with the physical dimension through the breath and just present moment awareness. Yeah, I mean, look, the way I see it is like so much of of methods and awakening. It's hard to talk to because it happens when it wants to happen, when it's ready to, right? Like
yeah.
I didn't choose to wake up. It happened, and I think everyone would say that for their own journeys, it's like it was happening to them, through them. For me, my greatest method was suffering itself.
Mm,
That's what got me there. Suffering and just continuing to be disillusioned by the dissatisfaction of life
yeah.
and not fulfilling me.
Yeah.
That's
Once you
what,
get to that breaking point, there has to be something
yeah,
else. Yeah.
yeah. So that's what got me to the awakening moment. I think methods like meditation, yoga, reading, journaling, those things are great, but they serve more as ways to deepen the realization,
Mm,
to further integrate so that you can remember who you are more continuously so that you don't reside more in a state of forgetfulness. So it's like up to the awakening moment, your greatest method is just to live and let yourself, if you need to suffer. And I'm not saying go out and seek suffering, but I'm saying like more often than not, the best thing for you is suffering,
that's really
paradoxically.
interesting because for me, it's been, I've never had a really like dramatic
Mm.
before and after.
Mm.
It's just kind of been this like very slow, steady, incremental slog,
Mm.
but it's working,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, because I'm happier, I'm have more energy, I I have more empathy for other people, I'm more forgiving than I used to be, and I noticed that,
Yeah.
and so I know it's working. Like this stuff really
Oh
works.
yeah.
Um, and I think, kind of one of the themes today has been like, it's not just about the concept. Like it has to have some grounded, practical results.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, it tear all the books, tear all the pages out of the books.
Yeah. Spirituality, when practiced truly, it's deeply practical. Like it's
Yeah.
deeply meaningful to your daily life as a way to juice the enjoyment that you soak from life. It's deeply,
Well
deeply
put.
practical. Yeah. And to that point, are psychedelics necessary? No, I've never had an acid trip. I've never had an ego shroom trip to have an ego death through it, as they often say. And as Ram Dass talks about, and you pointed to, Bob, like Ram Dass spent many years tripping on acid to realize that he didn't need to trip on acid to be with God, to realize
Yeah, it's
God.
not
Um,
about getting high, it's about getting free.
right. and 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 strangely, the greatest high is the natural high, which is just being.
Yes, liberation.
The free state, the liberated state. And that's the natural high. And that's what everyone who uses psychedelics is chasing, what they seek, what they're aiming for. And they temporarily realize it. And that's why they confuse themselves to say, oh, psychedelics is the answer. And that's why we had this whole summer of love hippie movement of people getting high all the time on acid and drugs, because they thought that was the portal and gateway to God. But they came to realize that no, it wasn't. It was just another drug. And yet, while it can help you to realize that mind-free state of being, it's not sustainable. It's not the shift.
It's not the answer.
Yeah.
It is a tool.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a tool.
Yeah.
Admittedly.
Yeah.
I'm tripping right now. Can you tell? No. No, I'm pro the taboo going away. I'm pro, because even 5 years ago, I couldn't say that I, had ever done psychedelics except for a really close group of people, and now I'm like, I wrote about it in my book. It's like, it's a very different environment now, thanks to the legalization. It should be legal if pharmaceutical industries are able to have doctors give people drugs that can kill you, then sacred plant medicine should be accessible. I'm pretty firm about that from like a legality standpoint. But that said, you're absolutely right, Cam, that it's not the be all end all. And it is something that is not sustainable. The Alan Watts is the best. The biologist takes his eye off the microscope and takes notes off of it. There's some people that are just staring at the microscope all day long, and you got to eventually say, hey, okay, cool. I realize, this is what I learned from that. That's what I realized from that. Take your notes and move on with it, integrate it and keep going.
Yep.
You use it as a tool, but yeah.
Yeah, good point. Use it as the tool, but it's not the end all be all. And it's not necessary, but it can be used as a tool to help facilitate the shift, as a way to help you just get a glimpse of truth, a glimpse of awareness, pure awareness, beyond the mind.
Yeah.
Which then,
and it's a sunny afternoon with your love. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't operate heavy machinery.
Yeah.
All right,
Bob,
let's give these books away.
Yeah, let's wrap this up. To be an Awakenpedia member, as an Awakenpedia book giveaway. Bob is.
Oh, right. Yeah. When you join Awakenpedia, then Cameron will forward me the emails, and then we'll shuffle them.
Yeah. And book giveaway, fantastic book.
We're giving away two.
Join Awakenpedia. And
what's y'all's tiers?
Well, we have two tiers. One is solo journey, as I call it, which is designed for you to be able to just go through the teachings platform in your own way, on your own time, how you want to use it to serve you on your journey, videos, audios, writings.
And it really is an encyclopedia. There's a lot of really great stuff in there, by the way.
Yeah, there's a lot in there, and it's growing every week. Three new teachings added every week, all original, channeled through me. I don't take credit for it. I just get out of the way.
It's really sharp. As someone who's familiar with the material, so keep it up, brother.
Thank you. And then the higher tier is the Join the Tribe tier, which is more if you're looking for a community aspect to it, social interaction. There's a member forum where you can interact with other members, form soul bonds, and we have this rapidly growing partner network of with dozens of other holistic healers and practitioners that offer wide range of services across all the modalities: EFT, online yoga, Reiki, craniosacral-therapy,
you guys do group meditations, group talks.
There's a lot of stuff.
It's pretty fantastic. Like I said, you need to give me an affiliate link, because I pointed a handful, maybe a dozen people your way.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe they came through, maybe not. I don't know. But a lot of people ask me, they're like, "Man, I'm just out here. I left my
Mm,
church, and these guys won't talk to me, and who else is, well, what else are people doing out here?" And I said, well, there's a couple of places online, and you know,
yeah,
it's a pretty accepting place in spiritual Instagram.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, and
Yeah,
appreciate that. And yeah, it's growing well, and you know, the intent is pure, which is just to help people help themselves by realizing who they are and transmuting any lingering suffering into everlasting peace. I mean, that's the aim, and doing it with the community, because awakening's more fun when it's with other people that share the mission and interest. Um,
yeah.
that's what
I
it's
love
about.
I loved your pitch on the group. So when I was finishing the book, I was like putting all this stuff together in terms of like demographic and like, I had like an author coach for a little bit because I was self-published, and it was just like, what's your audience? And I was like for mystic philosophy, it's like
Yeah,
um, every human being,
yeah.
anyone stuck in the wheel of samsara
Right.
that desires to break the chains of impermanence. Um, and yeah, no. Then you say, okay, 20s, 30s, 40s, ex-Christian.
Yeah, yeah,
Then you dial in the demo, but it is for everybody.
yeah,
Awesome.
for sure. Well, look, what I'd say is, so guys, book giveaway if you join Awakenpedia, but otherwise you should still get the book, even if you don't want to join Awakenpedia. If you haven't been able to tell from this conversation with Bob, he's one of the real ones. He's as legit as they come, and he brings humor into it, which is an incredible bonus. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone does that. That's
Thanks,
not my
brother.
forte. That's Bob's, and he's a master at it. So y'all should get this book and follow him and be a part of whatever offerings he ends up including now and in the future, because it's only going to help you. It's only going to allow you to be more in tune with yourself, who you are, come into deeper, more grounded peace, and just enjoy this ride that we call life, right? Just enjoy the experience. Stop taking it all so seriously and just be and relax into the moment.
Beautifully put. Yeah,
So,
Ram Dass says, we'll end with this. He says, there's a line from Lao Tzu in Tao Te Ching, which is, he who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. I think about that every time I
yeah.
go and give a lecture.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we
Thanks,
try
Cam.
our best anyway.
We do our
All right, Bob.
best.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
All right.
Anyways,
Alrighty. Bye,
good
everybody.
stuff.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
guys. Thank you so much.